Introduction to Overcoming Barriers to Doing. There comes a time in every creative journey when the challenges you face seem to tower over the small yet persistent actions you've taken up until now. It is in these moments that the real work of doing comes under pressure, when fear, self-doubt, or unexpected setbacks challenge the progress you've built through everyday action. This chapter focuses on the practical ways to meet those barriers head-on, to identify what holds you back, and to develop the inner tools needed to move past these obstacles. It is a conversation about building the courage to act in the face of uncertainty, and reaffirming the value of each small step taken despite lingering doubts. Hi, I am Simon Blake, was trained for years privately to be a film actor. In addition, I studied over 8,000 acting classes, which is over 25,000 hours of class time. The power of doing, overcoming barriers. I remember sitting in a modest rehearsal space during a period when one actor, normally so confident on stage, found himself frozen before a critical scene. Not because he lacked skill or preparation, but because a flood of self-doubt suddenly clouded his mind. His eyes darted around as the light dimmed, and the familiar hum of anticipation in the room gave way to a heavy silence. In that moment, it became clear that even after many hours of disciplined practice, the inner voice of fear can still rise. Later that night, when we gathered for a brief chat, he described how his anxiety was not just about making a mistake, but also about the worry that every misstep might define him. That conversation left an impression on me, a reminder that the obstacles we face are not external forces, but internal barriers that we learn to overcome through persistence, support, and a willingness to adjust our approach. This chapter is about overcoming those barriers that often manifest as the fear of starting, the weight of past mistakes, or the shadow of high expectations that can stifle even the most genuine creative impulse. Overcoming these hurdles is not about a dramatic overhaul of your life or a miraculous change in a single moment. It is about recognizing that every time you choose to take a step, no matter how small, you are already making progress. It is about accepting that setbacks are part of the journey, and that each challenge you meet can teach you something invaluable about your own resilience and capacity to grow. Consider a time when you hesitated to try something new. Maybe the decision to try a different line of work, a new hobby, or even a creative project that seemed daunting at first. That hesitation, often rooted in past experiences or internal pressures, can be a significant barrier to progress. I recall a colleague who spent years postponing a creative idea because he feared it would never measure up to his own lofty expectations. These innovative thought project that blended his passion for storytelling with a practical application in everyday life remained dormant until he finally decided to break through the cloud of perfectionism. With each small, deliberate action, he built a foundation of confidence that allowed him to see his own potential. His journey was not marked by one sweeping change, but by a series of steps, each one a quiet victory over hesitation, each one a reminder that making mistakes is an essential part of the learning process. In music, acting, or any other form of creative work, the barriers may come in different forms. They might appear as negative self-talk, the fear of not being good enough, or the worry that every misstep will be judged harshly by others. These internal voices can create a loop of inaction, where the effort to do any work is overwhelmed by the thought of potential failure. The truth is that every creative journey has its share of obstacles. What sets apart those who succeed from those who give up is not the absence of barriers, but the determination to push through them despite the challenges. Also, visit emotional preparation. Calm. This chapter explores how you can start to dismantle these barriers by first understanding them. The process begins with awareness, recognizing when fear or doubt is taking hold and identifying its source. Sometimes it is the memory of past failures or a momentary lapse into negative self-judgment that disrupts your flow. Once you have identified these triggers, you can begin to challenge them by creating a plan that includes realistic expectations and a clear path for moving forward. This isn't about expecting instant change. It is about accepting that progress is built on many small, consistent actions. One practical method is to break your goals into even smaller, more manageable tasks. For instance, rather than setting out to transform your entire creative routine overnight, focus on one tiny habit. That might be setting aside just 5 extra minutes a day to work on a project, or simply writing a single line of dialogue instead of a full script. By reducing the task to a level that feels no longer overwhelming, you open up the space for action. Over time, these small steps accumulate, and the seemingly insurmountable obstacle begins to shrink in significance. They show you that your work is not defined by one large, unattainable goal, but by the sum of many modest actions taken over time. Another key aspect of overcoming barriers is the role of self-compassion. It can be challenging, especially in a creative field, to accept that mistakes will happen. The pressure to perform flawlessly can be intense, and may even cause you to hesitate before taking a necessary risk. Instead of being harsh with yourself over missteps, allow room to learn from each one. Accepting that errors are part of the process can transform them into opportunities for growth. Think of it like a musician who, after repeating the same difficult piece over and over, finally discovers that a misplayed note leads to a moment of improvisation that changes the character of the piece in an exciting way. This understanding that imperfections are not failures, but stepping stones, helps to create a mindset that welcomes risk rather than avoids it. An equally important dimension in overcoming barriers is building a support system that reinforces and buries your efforts to keep moving forward. Sometimes the internal voice of doubt is so strong that it feels overwhelming to face it on your road. In these moments, the encouragement from friends, mentors, or peers can be immensely powerful. Sharing your struggles openly and hearing that others have confronted similar challenges can provide reassurance. I recall a time when an actor I knew confided in a trusted mentor about his fear of judgment after a less than perfect performance. The mentor's simple response that every mistake was part of the process and that true growth comes from continually trying helped him to see his struggles in a new light. Such support not only eases the burden, but also builds a community dynamic where each member's progress uplifts the whole group. This shared understanding fosters an environment where barriers are seen as common challenges, rather than personal failures. As you reflect on these experiences, it becomes evident that building resilience is essential in the face of setbacks. Resilience is not something that is suddenly acquired. It is developed gradually through repeated exposure to challenges and learning how to recover. In your creative journey, each setback, no matter how discouraging, can become a lesson if you choose to see it that way. For instance, every time you finish a project, even if it doesn't meet your own high standards, You gain valuable insight into your process and learn what adjustments need to be made. This cycle of action, feedback, and adjustment fosters resilience. It teaches you that obstacles can be overcome and that your creative spirit is strong enough to withstand and learn from setbacks. One strategy for developing resilience is to set aside a regular time for reflection on your 1916 progress. This might be through journaling, a quiet walk, or discussing your experiences with someone you trust. Taking the time to analyze what worked, what didn't, and how you handle difficult moments can provide a sense of progress that is often hard to see when you're caught in the middle of challenges. This reflective practice nurtures self-awareness and helps to recognize that each barrier faced is a lesson that will contribute to your long-term liking. Growth. Over time, this habit of reflection imbues you with a deeper understanding of your strengths and areas for improvement, reinforcing the idea that every small action taken is a positive move forward. It is also valuable to reframe your perception of barriers from seeing them as insurmountable walls to viewing them as temporary challenges, ones that can be overcome with persistence and thoughtful adjustment. In any creative path, there will always be moments when the challenges loom large. Yet, each barrier you overcome builds confidence and a sense of mastery that will propel you onward. Overcoming barriers is not a single event, but an ongoing process of trial and error that transforms hesitation into continuous movement. As you begin to see each barrier as a part of the learning curve rather than a permanent block, you'll find that the power of doing becomes even more potent. To illustrate, imagine a scenario where you are overwhelmed by a project that seems too extensive to manage. Instead of giving in to paralyzing anxiety, you might break the project into smaller tasks that are easier to initiate. With each completed task, you build a sense of accomplishment that fuels further actions. Over time, what once appeared to be a daunting challenge becomes a series of manageable steps that lead to a finished work reflecting your commitment and persistence. This approach is not about seeking perfection at each step, but about finding satisfaction in the progression, the knowledge that every small effort adds up to create significant change. Another part of overcoming barriers involves recognizing that the journey is seldom linear. There will be days when you make significant progress, and others when it feels as if nothing has moved forward. This nonlinear progression is natural and expected. Persistence, then, is not measured solely by the visible results, but by the consistent determination to continue despite the ups and downs. Learning to accept this ebb and flow can be liberating. It frees you from the pressure of having to produce immediate breakthroughs and allows you to focus on the long-term horizon of growth and development. At this stage of the narrative, it is clear that overcoming barriers to doing is a multifaceted challenge that blends self-awareness, resilience, and the willingness to seek support. As you go forward, keep in mind that every small act of confronting fear, every moment of self-compassion, and every instance of reaching out for support contributes to a stronger, more resilient version of yourself. Your creative journey, the very essence of doing, thrives not on ignoring obstacles, but on engaging with them, learning from them, and transforming them into stepping stones toward greater achievements. With these insights in mind, you are invited to view any barrier not as a signal to stop, but as a call to persist. Recognize that behind every moment of doubt, every obstacle that appears insurmountable, lies the opportunity to grow. The process of overcoming barriers is a testament to your commitment to doing, a journey where each action, no matter how small, contributes to a legacy of continuous improvement and eventual success. As you prepare to move forward into the next part of our narrative, take this chapter's lessons to heart. Let the stories of overcoming fear and self-doubt remind you that setbacks are not the end of your creative journey. They are simply pauses in a larger, ongoing process of doing. Every effort to conquer your fears, every small act of resilience, reinforces the truth that you have within you the capacity to meet any challenge. Take a moment now to reflect on the barriers you have faced in your own life, and consider how your repeated actions have gradually chipped away at those obstacles. You will find that the process of consistently moving forward despite temporary setbacks builds a quiet inner strength that prepares you for future challenges. Each step you take is a skill learned, each barrier overcome is a victory, and even the smallest act of courage is a foundation upon which more significant triumphs are built. In this way, the journey of overcoming barriers is not a detour from your creative path, but an integral part of it, a continual exercise in building resilience and nurturing the creative spirit. The challenges you encounter are simply part of your growth. Crafting a narrative of progress that is as much about the process as it is about the final outcome. As this chapter closes, and you ready yourself for the next stage of our exploration, remember that every barrier you overcome is a testament to your strength and your unwavering commitment to doing. Step forward with the assurance that each act of persistence not only clears a path toward your goals, but also reinforces the foundation of your creative journey. With each small action taken to confront and conquer your fears, you build a story of determination that will continue to inspire you in all areas of your life. Carry these lessons with you as you transition to the next chapter of our narrative, confident in the knowledge that the obstacles you meet are not ends in themselves, but stepping stones on the path to continuous growth. Every small victory over your barriers prepares you for the challenges ahead, reinforcing the idea that the power of doing lies not in the absence of obstacles, but in your persistent, courageous effort to move beyond them. Chapter 1. Identifying and Conquering Fear. Sometimes the hardest obstacles are not the ones you see outside, but the ones that arise within yourself. In this section, we explore how the internal barriers, those voices of doubt, lingering fears, and the weight of previous setbacks can be recognized and gently dismantled through action and self-awareness. Our discussion begins with examining these internal challenges in detail, sharing personal anecdotes and practical strategies that have helped many overcome what at first seemed insurmountable. By understanding the roots of these barriers and how they subtly shape your decisions, you can start to reclaim control over your creative path and overall well-being. I remember a period when I was preparing for a series of performances. I had rehearsed for weeks, honed the details, and yet one night, as I prepared backstage, I felt a heavy, almost paralyzing hesitation. It was not the lack of preparation or technique that troubled me. It was an internal voice questioning whether I was truly ready. In that moment, I recognized that fear was not a sign of weakness, but an enemy that had been built up over time by the memory of past mistakes and the pressure of high expectations. I later recalled a conversation with a fellow artist who had experienced a similar struggle. He told me that whenever fear arises, it is important to treat it as a signal rather than a verdict. He explained that each instance of hesitation held within it an opportunity, the chance to learn and make adjustments. His words helped me see that the internal barrier was less an absolute wall and more a signal guiding us to address insecurities directly. This personal experience set the stage for a deeper investigation into how internal obstacles can be overcome by consciously reframing our perspective on failure and imperfection. The first step in tackling internal barriers is to become fully aware of them. Often, these obstacles manifest as negative self-talk, a quiet voice that tells you that you are not capable, that mistakes are unforgivable, or that every misstep confirms your worst fears. In many cases, this internal dialogue is informed by earlier experiences where the outcome was less than ideal. For instance, take the story of a young actor I once knew who would freeze up whenever he was given a chance to perform in front of a live audience. Despite having practiced his lines countless times, he was haunted by the thought that one mistake would ruin everything. It wasn't until he began to view each performance as a series of independent moments, each one with its own value regardless of the final outcome, that he started to relax. By breaking the act of performing down into smaller tasks, he gradually shifted his focus from fearing failure to celebrating each small success. This simple change in perspective allowed him to reduce the weight of his self-imposed expectations and opened up space for genuine expression. Awareness naturally leads to acceptance. It is crucial to accept that mistakes are not only common, but are essential for growth. Every person who has reached a level of mastery in any field understands that error is part of learning. For many musicians, actors, and creative individuals, the challenge is to view these moments not as irreversible shortcomings, but as valuable experiences that contribute to a deeper understanding of the craft. Think of a musician who accidentally hits an offbeat during a rehearsal. While the initial reaction might be disappointment or frustration, with time, that missed beat can be seen as a valuable cue to experiment with rhythm and find a new, perhaps even more interesting variation. In this way, mistakes evolve into stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. Recognizing this can lighten the burden of perfectionism that so often holds you back, turning anxiety into curiosity and self-doubt into a willingness to try again. A practical exercise in overcoming internal barriers involves setting small, achievable goals that slowly build your confidence. Instead of setting out with a massive objective like rewriting an entire script or mastering a difficult piece overnight, focus on one tiny habit. It could be as simple as taking 5 extra minutes to review a challenging section of your work or writing a single short paragraph about your thoughts on a project. With each small task completed, you construct a foundation of self-assurance. I recall a colleague who found it nearly impossible to start a creative project because of the fear of the final product falling short of his ideal vision. After much discussion, he began by simply jotting down one idea each day without worrying about its quality. Over time, these little ideas accumulated, and before long, he had a solid base upon which to expand. His incremental success turned the overwhelming task into manageable steps, reinforcing the notion that progress is built upon many small actions. In addition to such habit-building exercises, cultivating self-compassion is a key element in dismantling internal barriers. It is all too common for individuals to be their own harshest critic. When the pressure to meet an unrealistic standard arises, the internal dialogue can become a relentless stream of criticism. Learning to treat yourself with kindness during moments of setback or imperfection is a powerful countermeasure. Instead of berating yourself for a perceived shortcoming, try pausing and recognizing that everyone faces similar struggles. A well-known actor, whose journey I've followed for many years, once shared that his breakthrough came when he decided to forgive himself for a particularly clumsy performance. Instead of dwelling on the mistake, he chose to analyze what he could learn from it. That simple act of compassion allowed him to transform a moment of apparent failure into a pride and play to be U.S. catalyst for improvement. By extending the same understanding to yourself, you not only reduce stress, but also open your mind to new possibilities that error-free approaches rarely provide. Another strategy for breaking through internal barriers is to establish a routine of reflection. Regularly taking time to look back on what has been accomplished, even if the steps seem small, can shine a light on progress that might be overlooked in the moment. This can take the form of journaling, a quiet walk, or a conversation with someone who understands the challenges of creative work. Through reflection, you can identify recurring patterns of anxiety or self-doubt and begin to understand their triggers. For example, if you notice that a particular task always triggers negative thoughts, you can develop a plan to approach it differently. Perhaps it means breaking the task into even smaller parts or seeking guidance from a mentor. This reflective process not only fosters greater self-awareness, but also reinforces the lessons learned through repeated action. It becomes a tool for continuously refining your approach and solidifying the belief that every setback is a setup for future success.